faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'll be interpreting the book Overcoming OCD for you. What do you think about OCD? Feel free to leave your comments in the comments section. For people with OCD, it's often a taboo topic that they find hard to talk about, even feeling guilty about it. And for example, washing hands dozens of times, drawing attention, or constantly thinking about dirty images and feeling immoral. These common OCD symptoms seem hard to understand, even unbelievable to most people. But actually, OCD isn't far from our lives. Recent statistics show that OCD incidence is rising, with nearly 2% of people developing it in their lifetime and about 70% of them before age 25. WHO's Global Disease Survey found that OCD is among the top 20 diseases affecting young and middle-aged adults. Many patients don't seek help early on for various reasons. Some wait almost a decade before getting professional help, which worsens the condition and makes treatment harder. I have a system. The book we're discussing today will guide OCD patients and their families on how to overcome it and correct misconceptions. The author, Frank Lamaniere, is a renowned French psychiatrist and OCD expert. His works have over 4.5-star ratings on Amazon in France, with 30 years of clinical and research experience. The book has nearly 200,000 words across 17 chapters, with Lamaniere providing many real OCD cases and treatments. Although the cause of OCD remains a mystery, treatments are quite advanced. Lamaniere believes that with proper use of cognitive behavioral therapy, OCD can often be cured. Now, I'll introduce the main content in 3 parts. Part 1, why do people develop OCD? What are the specific symptoms of OCD? Part 2, how to distinguish OCD from other psychological conditions. Part 3, how to cure OCD? First, Part 1, why do people develop OCD? OCD is a mental disorder characterized mainly by obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. Obsessive thoughts refer to involuntary, distressing ideas that frequently pop into one's mind. For example, a patient often imagines strangling their child, causing immense anguish. Compulsive behaviors are actions patients feel forced to perform to relieve discomfort or prevent disasters, like counting trees while walking and restarting if missed. Believing miscounting brings misfortune. Both obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors create intense inner conflict as patients struggle to resist them. This significantly impacts their work, relationships, and daily life. So why do people develop OCD? The causes are complex with multiple scientific explanations. Psychoanalysis suggests OCD alleviates inner conflicts from past traumas. Genetics. Research indicates heredity is primary, with similar OCD rates in families, especially parent-child pairs. Ethology finds human compulsions like cleaning or hoarding resemble animal behaviors rooted in neuroanatomy. Cognitive behavioral theory reveals OCD patients process information through biased, abnormal patterns called OCD cognitive models.
These faulty cognitive models trigger severe inner turmoil, leading to compulsive behaviors that trap patients in OCD's hell.
Next, we'll explore 5 common OCD cognitive models and their manifestations. The first cognitive model involves overestimating non-existent dangers while underestimating personal coping abilities. These patients fear contamination, catching diseases, or conceptual pollution like homosexuality or poverty. Common compulsions include excessive cleaning or completely avoiding certain objects and situations. For instance, avoiding public lockers entirely due to unfounded disease fears. Yet beyond obvious threats like poison or dirty items, some patients fear completely harmless things. For instance, one patient couldn't bear touching or approaching corks. Even hearing the word made him nauseous. Once at work, when someone suggested installing a cork board for notices, he resigned immediately just because the word contained cork. To avoid contact with dreaded corks, he wore gloves constantly, causing his hands to turn black from poor circulation. The second OCD cognitive pattern is perfectionism. To these patients, Anything less than perfect equals complete failure, making them feel incompetent. This mindset sacrifices all efficiency for perfection, sometimes crippling daily life. A common manifestation is extreme obsession with item arrangement, called orderliness, OCD. OCD. Patients must arrange items in a specific, perfect manner. They spend hours daily repeating these tasks relentlessly. Zag, a former engineer, spent hours daily measuring furniture wall distances and aligning slippers perfectly with a ruler. No toys were allowed on his child's floor. He wouldn't let his wife sit on the sofa to keep cushions perfect. Perfectionism also causes excessive checking. Take Jacques, highly intelligent, yet unable to function normally. He pursued flawlessness, 45-minute shaves, 30-minute ironing, double-checking bills until they were overdue. At his law firm, his obsessive detail checking meant he processed one document while others handled four. Extreme inefficiency exhausted him, working one day, then resting three, until he was fired. Perfectionism. Another manifestation is decision paralysis. Taking 15 days off to find the perfect outfit only to return it, or even struggling with simple tasks like reading. For example, reading a newspaper requires covering every single word from first to last. Only then is it considered properly read. Lessons. If they misread anything, they must restart the entire newspaper, turning leisurely reading into an ordeal. Whether it's excessive checking, indecisiveness, or other perfectionist demands, the result is crippling inefficiency that disrupts normal life. The third OCD cognitive pattern is inflated responsibility. Patients feel excessive guilt, fearing their actions might harm others. The main manifestation is disproportionate worry. Consider Christopher's case. Whenever driving, he'd obsess over causing accidents, like hitting someone during turns. To prevent injuries, he'd detour through entire neighborhoods checking roads for potential victims. But terrifyingly, he believed these detours could cause new accidents. Thus, the checking became endless. When riding his motorcycle, he avoided honking, fearing the noise might trigger heart attacks in pedestrians. Sometimes this misplaced responsibility applies to completely unrelated matters. Like one patient who showered 4 times, not for cleanliness, but believing otherwise would bring disaster to loved ones. The fourth cognitive pattern is intolerance of uncertainty. Patients are consumed by doubt about life's unknowns. This breeds fear, manifesting as exhaustive detail seeking to increase certainty, even for trivial details, like Clement obsessing over whether he truly loved his girlfriend. He acknowledged her wonderful qualities and long list of virtues, but he believed thoroughly examining their love before marriage was absolutely necessary. So he spent 8 hours daily questioning if she was his soulmate, driven by unbearable uncertainty. Clement actually broke up with her, regretted it, and reconciled. Though he eventually married her, he then began questioning whether to divorce. Similar issues occurred with Paul, a university professor. Paul has a son he primarily cares for, but whenever the boy leaves his sight, like attending a 3-day camp or playing with friends, he bombards him with endless questions upon return. What clothes were worn each day? Which socks to the park? Which side of the road was walked on?
This interrogation stems from Paul's inability to tolerate unknown details in his son's life.
The fifth OCD cognitive pattern is thought-action fusion, overestimating thought importance and blurring mental behavioral boundaries. Patients become hyper-anxious about intrusive thoughts, and suppression, ironically, strengthens them. This is common among religious followers terrified of violating doctrines. One Orthodox Jewish woman was nearly broken by her OCD. Our faith prohibits thinking of God in bathrooms, yet divine thoughts automatically invaded her mind there, causing constant dread. Another patient obsessively reminded himself not to mix dairy and meat while cooking, trying to prevent mistakes. He discarded hundreds of frying pans. We've covered the 5 main OCD cognitive patterns. Some OCD cases feature one dominant pattern, while others combine multiple, like hoarding blending perfectionism and risk overestimation. Hoarding disorder, nicknamed squirreling, involves compulsively accumulating useful and useless items, like squirrels stuffing their cheeks until bursting, yet still piling more food.
Patients fear discarding anything might cause future disaster or believe collections must remain perfectly intact. Losing one item ruins everything.
Take IT engineer Shelley, whose apartment overflows with magazines, papers, and related items in every corner. The piles reached the ceiling, forcing him to move to his parents' home. But soon their house got filled too. He ended up buying 2 garages just to store his things. Then there's Paul, the professor we mentioned. He collects every candy wrapper from his son's childhood, every scrap of craft paper, unable to discard even one piece. He meticulously organizes everything in his home storage. We've now explored OCD's 5 cognitive patterns and various manifestations. But in daily life, many people double-check locked doors or review documents carefully. Does that mean they have OCD? Is being extra careful or setting high standards automatically OCD? Others with depression or phobias might wonder if their symptoms indicate OCD too. So what actually constitutes having OCD? Does having compulsive behaviors alongside other conditions mean it's truly OCD? In part 2, we'll distinguish OCD from other conditions. The 5 most confused conditions. First is worry. Everyone experiences it, causing persistent anxiety that disrupts focus. Though similar to obsessive thoughts, worry isn't OCD. First, worry is temporary, like stressing over an unprepared exam for 2 weeks, then forgetting it afterwards. Normal worry seems reasonable and proportionate to most people. For example, many wonder before marriage if their partner is the one. That's normal worry. But spending 8 hours daily on this question throughout a 3-year relationship, that's OCD. The second condition confused with OCD is fixation. What is fixation?
Like an actor obsessively pursuing a lead role by studying scripts daily, or a collector strategizing to acquire a rare piece. These are actively desired fixations whose fulfillment brings joy.
But obsessive thoughts are different. They're involuntary and extremely painful during the process, while worry and fixation are normal psychological states. However, the third psychological condition, easily confused with OCD, belongs to the realm of mental disorders. This is obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Epidemiological studies show that having OCD and having obsessive-compulsive personality disorder are not the same thing. People with OCPD are also demanding about details and perfectionist, but they see it as reasonable, so there's no pain of wanting to change but failing. Moreover, OCPD manifestations permeate all aspects of life.
When others are late for appointments, those with OCPD view it as irresponsible.
They expect others to do things in their style. Severe OCPD causes major relationship issues, making them misfits who need psychotherapy to correct. In contrast, OCD patients suffer from wanting to change symptoms but can't. Symptoms aren't all-encompassing, like repeatedly closing doors, and most don't demand others conform. Now, in the fourth condition, easily confused with OCD, is depression. Depressed people often lack interest, feel sad, or struggle to focus, and may have persistent intrusive thoughts. For example, repeatedly recalling painful scenes. Although this is common in depression, it's not compulsive behavior. The biggest difference is that depressive symptoms align with the patient's thought patterns. For instance, feeling sad over unpleasant events or missing loved ones when seeing objects. But OCD behaviors often occur in completely unrelated matters. For example, fearing work because the office has a corkboard the patient dreads. The fifth condition confused with OCD is various phobias, like social anxiety disorder, where people feel intense fear with strangers, worrying about sounding ridiculous, smelling bad, or losing bowel control. And these obsessive thoughts are common in social phobia. Agoraphobia patients fear places like malls or open streets, experiencing panic symptoms like rapid heartbeat or fainting. People with pure agoraphobia do not resort to compulsive behaviors to alleviate their fear. For example, spinning in place 10 times every time they go to a square. But OCD and phobias can coexist sometimes. For instance, someone afraid of contracting an illness might repeatedly visit hospitals and undergo medical checkups. These are compulsive behaviors characteristic of OCD. By distinguishing the 5 psychological conditions easily confused with OCD, we can clearly delineate OCD from other mental states or issues, enabling more accurate identification and timely seeking of help and treatment. The third part next will discuss how to cure OCD. For OCD, eliminating compulsive behaviors through treatment is more important than tracing its roots. Although treating OCD is challenging, the overall approach is clear. Use proper cognitive behavioral therapy supplemented with appropriate medication. Cognitive behavioral therapy consists of 2 parts: cognitive therapy and behavioral therapy. Cognitive therapy involves identifying and correcting the patient's OCD cognitive patterns. Behavioral therapy aims to eradicate compulsive behaviors, including mental and physical ones, to cure OCD. And then let's start with cognitive therapy. Some patients believe their compulsive behaviors are necessary and their worries and fears are justified, making them reluctant to cooperate with treatment. In such cases, cognitive therapy comes first, focusing on identifying faulty OCD cognitive patterns. Analyze specifically what is wrong, then correct these cognitive patterns. Once erroneous beliefs are fixed, patients become willing to undergo treatment, enabling cooperation with subsequent behavioral therapy or medication. Peter is a restaurant owner who spends hours every night checking if all stoves are turned off after closing. His reasoning is that if he doesn't check properly, the entire building might burn down.
The therapist's goal is to help Peter stop repeatedly checking the stoves. The first step is assessing the probability of disaster.
After detailed probability calculations, the therapist points out that the chance of a stove being left on, short-circuiting, and the safety device failing in Peter's restaurant is about 1 in 86 million. The second step is to point out the patient's cognitive errors. For Peter, the probability of an accident is so low, yet he spends excessive time checking, indicating he overestimates potential danger. Once this faulty cognition is identified, step 3 combines behavioral therapy to gradually reduce his stove checking time, ultimately curing the OCD. Moving from cognitive to behavioral therapy, most OCD patients know their compulsions are irrational but struggle to control them. These patients are ideal candidates for behavioral therapy. Behavioral therapy is the fundamental treatment for OCD. The author states the most crucial and common behavioral therapy is exposure and response prevention, with an 80% cure rate. Simply put, this method uses controlled exposure to anxiety-inducing situations until patients no longer need compulsions for relief, ultimately blocking the behaviors. For example, Sylvie had contamination OCD, fearing not just germs but anything related to trash cans, toilets, or swimming pools. She couldn't leave clothes in pool lockers and had to rewash hands after taking out trash before leaving home. Her therapist assessed Sylvie's OCD severity and encouraged treatment participation. The first step was creating scenarios Sylvie found intolerable, like the therapist touching her shoe sole, then requesting a handshake. When Sylvie refused, the therapist touched paper with the contaminated hand and asked her to touch it. Though clean, Sylvie wouldn't even touch the paper's edge. Next, Sylvie rated her perceived contamination level, 0 to 10, initially scoring 3. The therapist persisted with repeated exposures to similar triggers while tracking contamination ratings. After multiple sessions, Sylvie's ratings dropped dramatically. She could hold dust and even touch a toilet brush base, previously unthinkable. Ultimately freed from contamination OCD, Sylvie comfortably visited pools and no longer rewash hands after taking out trash. It's crucial to note that in exposure and response prevention, we must establish a series of small goals progressing from easy to difficult, ultimately achieving the overarching goal of overcoming OCD. For example, the smallest goal might be touching a hallway decoration, without washing hands after returning home, and resisting the urge to clean it. A slightly larger goal, sitting on a chair with outdoor clothes without cleaning it, then sitting again after changing into pajamas, eventually progressing to hosting a friend at home. And after guests leave, no cleaning allowed. The ultimate goal. Hosting 10 friends for dinner without deep cleaning afterward. In practice, goal setting is more detailed and incremental. Through this step-by-step exposure to OCD triggering environments, patients initially experience discomfort or even intense aversion, but persistence leads to diminished reactions over time. Eventually, discomfort frequency and intensity decrease until returning to normal levels.
Exposure and response prevention also effectively treats obsessive thoughts.
For instance, a patient tormented by involuntary blasphemous images knows they're absurd,
yet can't stop thinking about them. The therapist then has the patient rapidly read blasphemous texts aloud in front of others.
because reading requires simultaneous word recognition and pronunciation, making it nearly impossible to maintain obsessive thoughts concurrently. Initially resistant to reading such content, patients find their obsessive thoughts gradually diminish with persistence. And during 30 years of clinical work, the author identified flawed therapy approaches, unclear questioning, unexplained treatment plans, or omitted demonstrations. Such methods prove ineffective for curing OCD. When medication is needed, patients must follow prescriptions precisely, neither refusing due to dependency fears nor overusing superstitiously. Improper medication worsens conditions. In summary, OCD is like a mind-invading imp, often disguised as helpful intentions, creating chaos that disrupts normal life. For both OCD patients and their families, the disorder can feel like living in an eternal, recurring hell. By deeply understanding OCD, we can help affected spouses or relatives recognize symptoms, seek timely treatment, and ultimately overcome the disorder for healthier lives. After listening, what new insights do you have about OCD? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. All right, that concludes our interpretation of overcoming OCD. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.